Good morning, everyone. Today, it's my pleasure to have with us Adam Myers, professor in the Department of Pharmacology and Physiology at our School of Medicine and co-director of our Master of Science in Health and the Public Interest. He also serves as Associate Dean and Assistant Vice President for Special Graduate Programs at our Medical Center. Adam completed his doctorate at Georgetown nearly 40 years ago and began his career here in 1984. And we've been so grateful to have him as a member of our community over these many years. Adam, thank you for taking the time to be with us this morning. Let's jump right in. Your research in physiology is focused on the cardiovascular system, including the effect of alcohol and differences in sex on platelet and vascular function. Tell us about the questions that have animated your work. What drew you to this field of research and what excites you about it?
Okay, so I did get my doctorate at Georgetown, and those were kind of heady days. I suppose they always are for a PhD student, but for me, what was going on in vascular biology at that time was a lot of big discoveries. During that time and the early years of my career as an academic, a lot of important mediators were being discovered, potential drugs or drug targets in the future. Things like prostaglandins were being elaborated, leukotrienes, platelet activating factor, later on nitric oxide that I'm sure a lot of people have heard about, one of the most important mediators in our body, cytokines, things like tumor necrosis factor, interleukins, those are turning out to be very important, for example, in the response to COVID. And so in those early years, I was really fascinated by this number of important mediators that was being elaborated. And a lot of my research focused at that time on how those mediators affected blood vessels, platelets, the endothelial layer of blood vessels, and then how that would play into the physiology and pathophysiology of our cardiovascular systems in both normal function and in states like shock. So those were the early years. Later on, I got more interested in things like how those mediators and processes that we've been studying play into differences between men and women and rates of heart disease and such. Later, the effects of alcohol on blood platelets became of interest. I spent a lot of time studying the effects of moderate alcohol on parameters related to cardiovascular disease. And what we found back then, and a lot of people found, was that moderate alcohol actually was fairly harmless as far as the cardiovascular system, and in some ways a little bit beneficial. Everybody's heard about the kind of potential benefit of an occasional glass of red wine, for example. Of course, on the flip side of that, too much alcohol is bad for a lot of things, including the cardiovascular system. But somewhere along the line, the muse of teaching became much more prominent in my career, and I got involved in building programs, and along with that I started doing research into learning and what were some of the things that affected student engagement and learning, and perhaps we'll talk more about that later on in the interview.
Sure. Well, we can jump right into some of that. You launched a master's program in health and the public interest in 2018, serving as co-director of the program. Tell us a little bit about that program, and what do you see as the importance of interdisciplinary programs like this and these opportunities for collaboration across our campuses?
Right, that's a great question. And that program really has been a collaboration between myself and Adrian Fu-Berman in the same department, but also with Yulia Chetsnova in psychology department. So the three of us were involved in starting it up, and Adrian and I have been co-directing it the last couple of years. It's part of the graduate school's, as you know, set of interdisciplinary programs, and I'm very excited about it. It's related to public health degrees, Masters of Public Health, for example, but I think the three of us realized that the current debate around healthcare and health insurance, et cetera, in the United States is pretty much broken. I mean, I think that's pretty obvious to everyone. The discussion usually starts with money and ends with politics. And somewhere along the line, there might be something about individual health, but it's an ugly discussion and doesn't take into account so much of what's important to an individual's relationship with their own health and with the healthcare system. So the premise of this program is that non-medical factors, non-scientific factors are also important in one's health and in one's relationship with the healthcare system. Things like culture, identity, psychology, marketing, I could go on and on, the legal systems, socioeconomic status. So that in itself, I think, is a pretty interdisciplinary way of looking at health, but I think it's a very realistic one. We all know that socioeconomics plays a part in one's health, but the current pandemic has really brought that up for everybody to look right at and see how socioeconomic status affects one's health and susceptibility to various diseases, even their lifespans, and so important to understand all of that rather than just looking at what's going to be the finances of our new healthcare system, what kind of policies do we have to put in place around vaccines or around health insurance. Let's look at the people and everything about them. So one of the things that is also differentiating from other programs like it is that we have a big advocacy component. We want people who want to make a difference. And I think, Georgetown as a whole wants to train people who want to make a difference. We especially want to train people who are going to make a difference in this healthcare world, who are going to be out there working for social service organizations, for government, for research organizations, any number of types of institutions, trying to make a difference rather than being the one who just is a policy wonk. Or nothing wrong with that, but there's more to this than that. Or perhaps just an epidemiologist. That's a great thing to be, but we want people who are going to take those kinds of skills and try to apply it out there in an interdisciplinary way.
Got it. Thank you. Now, you serve on the faculty advisory board for CANDLES, which is our Center for New Designs in Learning and Scholarship, and you've been actively involved in its initiative on technology enhanced learning. Share with us what it's been like working with CANDLES, integrating technology into your own teaching, and maybe what your experience has been like as we all transition to a virtual learning and telework environment.
Okay, so I have a fairly comprehensive answer to that question, and so you'll bear with me.
Sure.
I've been working with CANDLES for, I think, 12 or 13 years. And at first it was basically out of interest in the things that they were doing. About a dozen years ago, it became a necessity for me because the medical center wanted me to work with George Mason University and establish a joint program. I'm sure you remember the signing ceremony 11 or 12 years ago with the president of George Mason. So that program involved transferring some educational materials between the institutions, and we needed to have a way to do some remote teaching, et cetera. So we started looking into things like lecture capture technology and rich multimedia enhanced ways of doing that. And we worked with CANDLES. We went to them first because we knew that they were the mavens at technology enhanced learning at the time. And a number of folks over there, Brian Boston, and at the time, Janet Russell, et cetera, stepped up and got us involved with lecture capture, which was fairly new at the university at that time. We didn't actually have much of a footprint there. We had a exploratory contract with one of the vendors, and so we established lecture capture, first trying it on our campus so that we could see if it would work and be transferable over to Mason. And it was so widely accepted by our students that before you knew it, the whole medical school was recording all their big lectures. Our big graduate programs were recording their lectures. It was a great tool for academic continuity. If somebody was sick and couldn't teach, maybe they'd want to pull up a lecture from last year. If a student had to go for a some kind of event, maybe an appointment, and they missed class, they had a way of making it up without trying to decipher someone else's notes. Great academic continuity tool. We could use it during snowstorms. It was just widely accepted by everybody over at the medical center. And in fact, we worked with the CCT program and Candles to kind of track that spread of that technology across the university, and presented a paper on that at a educational meeting. So I kind of got involved as a topic of research in this educational technology. And somewhere along the line, Candles gave me one of their largest grants to pursue this research and to facilitate what I was doing. And we looked at other things besides lecture capture. I won't bore you with the details right now, but what happened, to get to the last part of your question, is that when COVID came along, it was just second nature to us. We knew how to do this. We were already doing this with a group of students out at George Mason, with a group of students on the SCS campus in Northwest Washington. So I think the medical center, more than anywhere else, was able to just stay on course with education a year ago when we went virtual. And I'm greatly indebted to Candles for this. I think we all knew what Candles did. Some of us benefited in our own pursuits from what Candles was doing. But honestly, I think we would have been looking at a major train wreck if we didn't have Candles operating for the last dozen or 15 years.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you. You've also been involved with GEMS, our experimental medical studies program, which prepares underrepresented students for success in medical education through a one-year non-degree post-baccalaureate program. Can you share with us a little bit about your involvement with GEMS and why your engagement with the program has been particularly important for you?
Yeah, thanks for asking that question. So I was on a mini sabbatical in Finland, of all places, in the summer of 1985, when someone asked me would I like to do a little teaching in the GEMS program. And I said, sure. And when I got back to Georgetown later that summer, I did that little bit of teaching. And during the next school year, I was approached by Joy Williams, who later became director of that program. She asked me if I would be willing to teach a course, a semester long. It actually starts in July and runs through November, so it's a pretty long course, as one of the ways of preparing students for medical school, disadvantaged students. And I thought about it, and I thought, well, I should probably talk to my chairman about this before I take on that kind of responsibility. And so I did that. And what my chairman said, that's great. If you want to do it, fine. But I want you to understand that you got to do that because you want to do it, you enjoy doing it, because when you get looked at for promotion and tenure, they're going to be looking at research papers, medical school teaching, graduate school teaching. GEMS teaching is something extra. It's not what you were brought here to do. I appreciate that it's an important thing, but that's on you, Adam. So I said, okay, let me give it a try. So I started with the GEMS program in 1985, and I just finished the course this past December, and I taught that whole period. And I think what's very gratifying to me with working with that group of students is, all our students are great. They all have their own stories and their own goals and dreams. For the GEM students, it's quite a reach. They're doing something that's, maybe outside their wheelhouse. That's a challenge. They typically come from first generation families. They don't have doctors in their families. They know they have that desire, and they believe they have the skills to do it. And the GEMS programs looks at those people very carefully that apply, and selects people that they believe, despite disadvantage in their lives, have the skills and traits, the non-cognitives we sometimes talk about, that are going to lead to success. And by and large, those students are successful. So it's a big reward to us to be able to identify students like that and put them into the workforce. We're not competing for disadvantaged students with Hopkins or Harvard or Maryland. We're identifying people that ordinarily might not get that chance, but we believe are going to make great doctors who are going to make a difference. And I think we're pretty successful at it. So I want to tell a quick story.
Sure.
So 2018-19 school year, you remember those times. It's just after Charlotte, the Black Lives Matter movement, which is unfortunately, still controversial today, was gaining steam and dealing with the tragic deaths of a number of people across the country. Like I said, unfortunately, that's still going on today, but it was pretty hard on our students. And I appreciate everything Georgetown did, the medical center did, to try to have safe spaces to talk about those events, to explore people's own backgrounds. In my GEMS class, I could sense that this was a heavy weight our students were carrying. So I started out slow, but I took some of my time. I don't really report to anybody for this class, so I can do what I want. And started using that as an open space by talking about things that matter to me about race and culture and identity. I grew up as a product of two cultures, an Asian culture and a Caucasian culture. And, I thought I knew something about, how it felt. And so we had great conversations that year with the students. Sometimes I took up a half an hour at the beginning of class, recounting part of my life and asking them, about theirs. And it was really kind of a transformative time, I think, for me to be able to talk to the students and for them to know that people cared. And later that year, I got nominated and elected for the Magis Society of Master Teachers in the medical center. And I went to the ceremony, and, usually some people in the society show up and a couple of your friends or family members. And when I got up to accept the award, there sitting in the middle of the group was a whole row of GEM students. Something I've never seen, a group of students that are to support the faculty members. So I knew when I saw that the group of us had done something special that year. So that gives you an idea how important that GEMS group has been to me.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that with us. Now, Adam, after all of these extraordinary years of service, I know you're preparing to retire. So what's next for you? Are there projects that you're especially looking forward to?
Okay, so I got to say first off that I'm talking to the graduate school about keeping a role in the health and the public interest program at some level. I know it's a little tricky HR-wise and all of that, but I think I continue to help and I can continue to make a difference. So I'm hoping to do that. I'm going to maintain a number of relationships with the university beyond that. Of course, I won't be full-time. I won't be coming to work every day. I'll be in my seat at the basketball games, but that's another story. It's a great season this year, by the way. I really loved it. So what else am I going to be doing? Another quick story. I started out as an evolutionary and ecological biologist and somehow ended up in physiology and biomedical sciences. And I've always sort of been interested in that kind of field. And as a hobby, Sue Mulroney, my wife, and I got involved in amateur paleontology. And so we have a place out in Texas. It's only dirt. It's 40 acres of dirt, but there's a lot of fossils there. And I'm going to be spending more time out there. It turns out, for anybody who knows this name, that we were able to document that the place was once prospected on by Barnum Brown of the American Museum of Natural History in New York. So, and he actually brought some specimens back. That was part of his adventures in the Big Bend region. So I want to do more of that. That's we've actually done an abstract at a meeting on the basis of that. I have a couple hobbies. Photography is big with me, and local history. I kind of combine those two things. So I'm really looking forward to getting out, taking pictures, looking for fossils, and then still keeping a toe in the waters at Georgetown and helping the health and the public interest program as it gets through these adolescent years, I guess you'd call them by now.
Well, I wish you the very best as you take that next step in your journey. As we bring this conversation to a close, is there a message you'd like to share with our community?
So I think the only message that I want to share is I want to thank the community for 40 some great years. You know, being a faculty member at a major university is at times a hard job, a trying job. But, you know, as I got to the middle of my career and then my later career, I came to realize that there's nothing else I would have ever wanted to do than be a full-time tenured faculty member at a university. You can't find a better job, at least not for me. It's the best job in the world. And thank you to you and all of Georgetown for affording me that great ride over 4 decades. So thanks.
Adam, we can't begin to express our appreciation to you for all of these years of exceptional service, and we wish you the very best as you take the next step forward. And thanks for joining me for this conversation today. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure, and thanks for asking.
And let me say goodbye to everyone. I look forward to being with all of you again soon. Take care of yourselves and take care of everyone around you. For every Hoya, everywhere.